Hello dear Odooers. Here at Apex Original, our B2B fashion business is growing nicely. But we are keen not to miss out on any opportunities. At any time, we want to have an overview of the top 5 quotations that haven't been confirmed yet. We want to know who the related customer is and which our salesperson is responsible. To build this report, we are going to find the data we need in our database and then insert the relevant view into a spreadsheet so our top 5 list stays up to date. Let's get started. Everything we need for our analysis can be found in the Sales app, so let's open that. We'll also activate development mode so we can see some extra information that's not always visible. To do that, press Ctrl-K on your keyboard, then type debug and select the first option. One of the things we can do in developer mode is check which model we are on by clicking on the little bug icon in the top right. Here we see that we are on the sales order model in the quotations view. Now we are ready to start preparing the data we'll retrieve from this view. Let's start by removing the My Quotations filter so we see the data for all our salespeople. For our reporting, we only want to see records with the status quotation sent, not the ones still in draft form, and not those that have already been confirmed as sales order. To do that, we'll set a new filter. So let's click inside the search bar and apply a custom filter. First, we select the right field to filter on. So let's type here status and click on the field. The operator is equal to is already the right one. And lastly, we want to indicate that we want to see records with the status quotation sent. Because we've activated developer mode, we can see the code for the domain here in the code editor. Then we can click search. After applying our filter, we can see here at the top of the screen that there are 11 unconfirmed quotations in total. Remember that number is going to be relevant later. We now have all the information we need for our analysis, a list of all our unconfirmed quotation, and for each one we know the customer, the salesperson, and the total amount. But actually, there's other information here that we don't need in our spreadsheet. So let's tailor the view even more by removing some fields via this little slider menu here in the upper right corner. Here we can see all the fields available in this view. And in case you're wondering, the text in brackets after each field name is the technical name of the field. For the specific report we're creating, we can remove the creation date, the activities, the company, and even the status. Of course, I could add fields too if needed, but I think it's fine like this. It might look a little empty now, but getting rid of unnecessary fields like this means we can keep our spreadsheet even tidier. Next, because we want to track the top 5 unconfirmed quotation, let's order the list in descending order on the total amount by clicking twice on the header. Now that our list is looking good, let's insert it into a spreadsheet. To do that, click the cog icon, then Spreadsheet, then Insert in Spreadsheet. In the window that opens, we have a few decisions to make. First of all, let's rename this list Top 5 Open Quotations. Next, we need to decide how many records to insert into our spreadsheet. By default, the number you see here is always the number of records that were visible in the view. In our case, there were 11 records, as I'm sure you'll remember, but as we are tracking our top 5 quotations, we'll update this to show 5 records. If we were working with a bigger list and needed to insert more records that were visible on the first page, we just entered the relevant number of records here. It's also possible to add more records directly into the spreadsheet itself, and I'll show you how to do that later in this tutorial. Next, we need to decide where to insert the list. Here in the Spreadsheet tab, we can choose to insert it into an existing spreadsheet, or we can insert it into a blank spreadsheet. When Odoo data is inserted into a blank spreadsheet, the spreadsheet is saved in the My Drive folder in the Documents app. From the Dashboards tab, it's also possible to insert a list into an existing dashboard, or even to start creating a blank dashboard from scratch. For more about creating and customizing dashboards in Odoo, check out our documentation and other tutorials in this e-learning course. To keep things simple, let's go back to the Spreadsheets tab and select this Sales Analysis spreadsheet and click Insert. And voila, a list is inserted into a new sheet in our spreadsheet. As soon as we insert a list, the list properties open on the right side of the sheet. These properties can be accessed at any time by clicking Data, then selecting the relevant data source. We can also access them by right-clicking any cell of the table, then clicking See List Properties. Let's see what information we have in the list properties at the top of the panel. Here we can see the list number. This is the third list that has been inserted into the spreadsheet, so this is number 3. We can also see the name we gave to the list, the model it was inserted from, the columns or fields it includes, and the domain. The domain is basically the conditions that were used to filter the list. If you remember, we filtered the original list to show only items with the status quotation sent. Let's say we changed our mind and now wanted to include confirmed sales order. We could simply click Edit Domain, change the rule to include both quotation sent and sent sales order. But we'll discard this for now, since we really do just want to see the open quotation. Back in our list properties, the last section is sorting. If you remember, we sorted our original list in descending order on the total, and that's what's shown here. It's really important to understand that this sorting is at the level of the data source itself. Changing this sorting or adding a new rule would actually change the records that are retrieved from our database. For example, changing this to ascending order would return completely different records, as we'd be looking at the 5 lowest open quotations. To create the report we need, we'll stick to descending. A word of warning. The local spreadsheets filter, which you might already be familiar with, only filters the data that's already visible in our spreadsheet. And in fact, when you are working with dynamic Odoo data in a spreadsheet, it's best to avoid using that local filter. A key point to understand is that the data we see here is still connected to our database. Right now, we're seeing the top 5 open quotations, but if later today we sent a new quotation for 10,000 euros, or if one of these open quotations is confirmed as a sale order, the data in our spreadsheet will be updated. This is one of the reasons why you shouldn't add raw data to an inserted list. Updates happen when a spreadsheet is reopened, when the browser page is reloaded, or when the data is manually refreshed by clicking Data, Refresh All Data. So how does this connection work? In fact, when you insert Odoo data into a spreadsheet, it creates what's called a data source. A spreadsheet can have many data sources connected to it, as you can insert data from multiple Odoo apps and models into one single spreadsheet. You can always see which data sources are connected to your spreadsheet by clicking the Data menu. This spreadsheet, for example, is connected to 3 data sources: a list that was previously inserted and our current list, represented by list icons, as well as a pivot table that was previously inserted. When you insert a list, the spreadsheet uses formulas to retrieve the values from your database via the data source. Let's click on the customer and check the formula bar to see how the spreadsheet is retrieving the value for this list header. This formula uses the Odoo-specific function Odoo list header. And if I click just inside the brackets, I can see the arguments. The first number is the list ID, which identifies the data source being used. In this case, it's list number 3. Partner ID is the technical name of the field, in this case the customer field. Customer is the display name for this field, which we could even edit. Let's change it to customer name. Next, let's click on the order reference in this first record to have a look at the formula that's retrieving the values. This formula uses Odoo-specific spreadsheet function called Odoo list. And again, if I click inside the brackets, I can see the arguments. As we already saw, the list ID is 3. The second number is the index. This represents the line on which the record appears in the data source, starting at 1 for the first record. For all values in the table, the formula includes the field's technical name. For this first cell, name is the technical name of the order reference field. And if we click on other cells on this row, we see the technical names of the fields in question. So partner ID is the technical name for the customer field, user ID is the technical name for the salesperson field, while amount total is the technical name of the total field. And in fact, we can directly access the underlying records at any time simply by right-clicking on a cell, then clicking See Records. Let's go back to our spreadsheet by using the breadcrumbs. Right now, this list is in a sheet of its own, but since we'll be converting this spreadsheet into a dashboard in another tutorial, we are going to move the list to the first sheet. That first sheet will then serve as the front end of our dashboard. There are two ways to move our table. We could select the table, then cut and paste using the usual keyboard shortcuts or the right-click menu, or we could reinsert the list where we want it to appear. Let's use this second method so I can really show you that data sources are connected to your entire spreadsheet and not to a specific sheet. We can actually go ahead and delete this sheet here, since we'll be reinserting a list elsewhere. Back here in our first sheet, we can already add the title of our new table in cell D2. So I type top 5 open quotations here with an else. Let's increase the font size to 14 and put it in bold so that it stands out. We'll reinsert a list just below. So let's select this cell, then click on the data menu. And before we actually reinsert the list, we can notice this little warning icon beside the data source of our top 5 quotation list. This tells us that while this data source is still active, the data itself is not actually being used in the current spreadsheet. Next, we'll go to reinsert list. Since we have 2 lists in our spreadsheet, we need to select the right one. We want to see the top 5 records, so we'll enter 5 and click confirm. And our list is added. A small word of warning. Reinserting a list like this reinsert the original list. So if you've made any manual changes to a list, like deleting a column, it's better to cut and paste it if you need to move it. So we've now created our top 5 list of open quotations, and we've moved it to the first sheet of our spreadsheet. Thanks to the connection with our database, the list will always be up to date as we send new quotations or as quotations are confirmed or rejected. But let's say we wanted to see the top 10 open quotations instead of only 5. And I know we decided to remove the creation date field from the original list, but maybe we want to add it back in. And while we add it, we'll add the customer's country too. Let's start by adding those extra records or rows. There are 2 ways to do this. You can just select the last row of the table over this last cell until the small cross appears, then drag down until you've added 5 more rows. The total number of records is also indicated as you drag the cross down. These new cells are populated with the appropriate formulas, and if there are corresponding records in your database, data appears. Let's undo that using the undo icon so we can use the reinsert list method as we saw earlier. Select the upper left cell of the table, then in the data menu, click reinsert list, then click the name of the list. In the window that opens, enter the number of records to insert. Here we want to see the top 10 records, so let's type 10, then click confirm. And voila, the table extends automatically. Speaking of adding fields, let's add the creation date we talked about. For that, we need a new column. Let's first resize the table so we can see the values better. Now we can select column D, then right-click here to insert a new column right. To make things easier, we are going to copy the order reference column header and paste it here, as we can now modify the formula here in the formula bar. So we need to change the field that's being retrieved. For that, we delete the field name, keeping the quotes, then start typing create and select the create date. This is the technical name of the creation date field. We also want to update the label, so let's replace order reference with creation date. Then press enter. To populate all the cells in the column, we just need to select the header cell again, then hover over the little blue square until the double cross appears and then double click it. We added back the creation date field, but we can actually insert any field from the model or any related field like the customer's country. This one is a little trickier and I'm going to open a sales order to explain why. We can see the customer address here in the customer field of the sales order. This information is not actually stored in the sales order model. It's stored in the contacts model. If I hover over the question mark, I can see in the second bullet point that the technical name of this field is partner ID. The fourth bullet tells me it's a many-to-one field. And if I look at the last bullet, I can see that it's retrieving the information from the rest.partner model, which is the technical name from the contacts model. In our spreadsheet, we'll be using that many-to-one customer field or partner ID field to reach across and retrieve the data that we need. Let's go back to our spreadsheet so I can show you how that works in practice. So again, let's add a new column, this time to the left of the salesperson. And like before, we'll copy and paste the salesperson header cell so we can modify the field and the field label. As I just said, we can create the path to the country field starting from the customer field. So let's delete this user ID field and start typing partner. If we click on this arrow on partner ID, we see all the related fields on the contacts model. We could scroll through the list to find the country, but it's easier to just type a dot, then type country and select country ID. In Odoo, this dot notation allows us to reach across to data from another model. Now that we've updated the field, let's change the field label to country. Then press enter. Again, we'll expand the formula to the whole column by clicking the header cell, hovering over the little blue square, then dragging down the formula to the bottom of the column. And voila, our customer's country is added. Lastly, make sure to check out our tutorial on key Odoo concept, also in this e-learning course, for more information on finding the technical names of fields. And that's it for this video. Now you're ready to start creating your own custom reports in Odoo Spreadsheet with live Odoo data that stays up to date as your business evolves. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.